I know we have a small crowd. Good morning. Thank you. Thanks for joining this breakout session on serving the customer. I'm Tony DiMedio, an associate partner with McKinsey & Company's Washington, D.C. office, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. Before I turn things over to Bev Godwin and our distinguished panel, just wanted to share 3 quick thoughts regarding customer service in government. First, as you all know, and many speakers this morning alluded to this, from Congressman Van Hollen to Danny Werfel, government agencies are being asked to do better and deliver better customer service with fewer resources, to do more with less. And this is a reason why a lot of us are here. The bar for customer service has never been higher. I mean, American citizens, our customers, are influenced by the experience that they get from great customer service organizations, from Nordstrom to Amazon.com to Virgin America, and they expect service delivery that's reliable, convenient, tailored specifically to their needs, and integrated and seamless across multiple channels. Now, that's a tall order to deliver on, especially considering that they're asking that of you at a time when, as we all know, resources are shrinking. Budgets are under pressure, and competition for talent has never been higher. But there's a good news to this story, and that's why our panel is here today. There are simple, inexpensive, tactical techniques that we all know about that can help you make concrete improvements to customer service very, very quickly. For example, simply communicating to your customers the level of service that they can expect can actually dramatically improve their service quickly while frankly reducing your operating costs. Think about, just telling customers, hey, it's going to take us 3 to 4 weeks to process your application. That will actually set their expectations for what the service can be and reduce the calls to your call centers, for example. So quick, simple, very tangible actions that you can take. And finally, there's an actual science to this. So for example, McKinsey annually surveys 30,000 customers across a number of industries to understand their evolving behavior and help organizations transform customer service. And we use behavioral science principles to redesign customer interactions. For example, getting bad experiences over with early in an interaction so that what customers remember are the more pleasant parts of the experience. I mean, there's a reason why, for example, when a restaurant delivers you the bill, it usually comes with a mint or some sort of complimentary dessert. It's that pleasant aftertaste that they want to leave you with. And so as I turn this over to Bev, keep in mind, again, that while the pressure mounts to do better with less, to do more with less, there are simple tactical techniques and proven behavioral science to systematically improve customer service. And I hope you'll hear more about this and other tips from today's panel. Now let me introduce Bev Godwin, who's the director of the Federal Citizen Information Center with the General Services Administration. This Federal Citizen Information Center provides government information where, when, and how the public wants it via USA.gov, GobiernoUSA.gov, Kids.gov, 1-800-FED-INFO, and publications. Prior to these posts, Bev held a number of other positions, including the director of the Center for New Media and Citizen Engagement with GSA, and the director of Online Resources and Interagency Development with White House Office of New Media. So let me introduce Bev Godwin, who will also introduce the panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. Most of you probably know that in April of last year, President Obama put out an executive order titled Streamlining Service Delivery and Improving Customer Service. And that executive order directed agencies to develop and monitor customer service plans and measures and to solicit customer feedback to improve service. It also called on agencies to use technology to streamline customer service and to emulate practices that have worked well in the private sector. Customer service is not new to the federal government. This executive order is a continuation of something that was started quite some time ago. During the 1990s, I worked at the National Partnership for Reinventing Government, and we had a huge focus on customer service at that time. In 1993, President Clinton issued an executive order requiring agencies to establish customer service standards. The conversation was quite different back then than it is now. Convincing agencies that they even had customers is where we really started. And I remember a number of agencies saying they didn't have customers, or we have one customer, it's the president, or it's Congress, or it's OMB. And the conversation has really changed, and I'm in an organization at GSA where we focus on the customer all the time. We're always looking at things from the customer in rather than the government out. But this executive order last year is a huge step at a time, as Tony said, when the public's expectations of government service have never been higher. Also, in the President's State of the Union address this year, he reemphasized by reiterating the public deserves competent, efficient, and responsive service. As a longtime advocate for great customer service, I'm delighted to see the changes that have occurred while I've been in government. I was also delighted to be asked to moderate this panel. And you're in for a treat. Our panel today, we have 3 experts in customer experience. 2 of our panelists are currently with the federal government, and one is working on a federal program that's been around for a while, and the other one is working on a new interagency presidential initiative. And our third panelist is from the private sector, a lead researcher with J.D. Power Associates, a firm well known for their expertise on the science of measuring and addressing customer satisfaction issues. So from all 3, you'll hear best practice case studies and actions you can take to improve service to your customers. So let me introduce them quickly and turn to them. They will present some case studies quickly, and then we'll open it up I'll start with some questions and answers and then open it up to the audience. So first we have Dennis Alvord. Dennis is the Executive Director of BusinessUSA.gov, just assuming the position in March of this year. This BusinessUSA.gov was launched by President Obama. It's a multi-agency customer service initiative designed to improve awareness of and streamline access to business assistance resources. Dennis previously served as the Executive Director of the Department of Commerce's Commerce Connect, which is a customer service initiative that simplifies access to commerce business solutions through a single entry point to programs, information, and services. Earlier in his career, Dennis served in a variety of executive positions at the Commerce Department, including Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for Economic Development, Regional and External Affairs, and as Acting Director and Deputy Director for Legislative and Intergovernmental Affairs. So he has a lot of government experience. He also has a Master's in Public Administration degree from GW and a BA in Political Science from the State University of New York. So welcome, Dennis. Next, we'll hear from Brenda Wensil. Brenda is the Chief Customer Experience Officer at the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Federal Student Aid, which is the single largest provider of funding for post-secondary education in the United States. Brenda and her team are establishing a customer-focused strategy to serve the 21 million students and families who apply for financial aid each year through the FAFSA and the 35 million borrowers. Prior to joining the Department of Education in 2010, Brenda held leadership roles for 20 years with Wachovia Corporation as head of customer strategy, marketing, and customer relations. Brenda also has a master's in organization development and executive coaching from the McColl School of Business at Queen's University and a BA in journalism from the University of South Carolina. And last but not least, we will hear from Gina Pingitore. She's the Chief Research Officer at J.D. Power and Associates, where she's responsible for the scientific rigor and oversight of the design and statistical analysis for all the studies. Since joining J.D. Power and Associates in 2002, Gina has developed models to establish the relationship between various voice of the customer measures and business outcomes. These efforts have been published in marketing journals as well as presented at numerous scientific and business conferences. More recently, Gina has focused on the development of measures of customer engagement through the creation of a customer commitment model, a standard construct to assess customers' dedication to a particular brand or product. Previously, Gina was a practicing licensed clinical psychologist and behavioral researcher in academia and at the Hines VA Medical Center in Chicago. Gina received her master's in psychology from Edinburgh University in Pennsylvania and a doctorate in psychology from Loyola University in Chicago. So join me in welcoming our panelists. And we'll start with Dennis.
Thank you, Bev. Thanks very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning to give you a quick overview of one of the administration's newest business assistance and customer service initiatives. It's called Business USA. This initiative kicked off on October 28th when the President issued a memorandum directing agencies to make it easier for businesses to access the programs and services to help businesses innovate and grow. He directed the adoption of a no wrong door approach that uses technology to streamline access to resources from across the government that are most relevant to addressing business needs. And he provided us with an entire 90 days to put the initial down payment on that vision in the form of a new web services portal. Our early focus has been on assistance to small businesses and businesses of all kinds that wish to export, although we are quickly evolving into other subject matter areas as well. And I should mention that certainly Business USA was kicked off. The impetus was this presidential memorandum that you see here before you. It is really completely in alignment and very consistent with the executive order that Bev mentioned previously on streamlining customer service and using technology to enhance customer service. That's Executive Order 13571. So the challenge. Today, when a business comes to the federal government looking for assistance, this is what they confront. As you can see, it's not exactly easy to find and access the resource you're looking to. What we discovered as part of our 90-day development process is that there are over 11 federal departments and many sub-operating units within those departments that provide at least 350 and growing every day different programs, products, and services that address business needs. There are over 175 individual contact centers or call centers across 26 federal agencies that support various types of federal programs and services. There are nearly 1,500 domains that support an estimated 11,000 federal websites that provide services, which essentially results in this. When a business has a question, it's go fish. Now, there's some great existing customer service resources that are available. I don't want to detract from those. Sites like SBA Direct and export.gov and FedBizOps and grants.gov are all wonderful resources for businesses and entrepreneurs to use to access the federal space. However, they continue to be fragmented, and part of our charge has been to figure out a way to kind of rationalize and improve this space. So on January 13th, before an audience of small businesses, the President announced that he was seeking authority to consolidate federal agencies into one department with one website and one phone number with a single mission, helping American businesses to succeed. And you see here the original graphic that I displayed and the more simplified version. At this time, he also announced the Business USA website would be forthcoming soon. So right now, our current focus is on creating a content-rich online web portal that for the first time aggregates information from across federal enterprise assistance providers and makes it more accessible to business. We're also looking to better integrate and rationalize the federal contact center. Now, ultimately, the decision about federal agency consolidation will rest with Congress. The President has submitted a proposal, but there's a whole lot that we can do administratively to improve the customer service experience related to accessing online resources and working with federal contact centers. Longer term, I think you're going to see us innovate and begin to incorporate more and more customer service best practices, such as feedback loops to hear preferred delivery mechanisms from businesses and entrepreneurs, establishing common customer standards across the federal space in order to ensure that we're providing timely, accurate, and helpful assistance to our business customers, providing more personalized experience. So for the first time, we'll be able to assess customers' needs based on their kind of voluntarily articulated preferences so that we can push information to them in a way that we really haven't done in the past in the federal space. And then really engaging more and more enterprise assistance providers to make sure that we have a complete portfolio of customer service solutions that are readily available to our customers. Our long-term strategy. Well, there we go. Sorry about that. The idea was essentially to create a new front door to accessing all that the federal government has to offer. Our long-term strategy is that while we recognize that we have different brands that are owned separately, they're operated separately, they're doing different things, they have different customers, nevertheless, they're bound together and they're providing a unified presence and service to the federal space. Our goal is really to provide easy access to the full range of services, to decrease the time and effort that businesses and entrepreneurs waste navigating through the federal bureaucracy to find what they need, to streamline generally and coordinate across federal program assistance providers, to better leverage resource and assets, and to enhance customer-oriented service overall through those common standards. On February 17th, we launched the initial web presence. We've been up and running for about 2.5 months now. The initial results are very encouraging. We've had over 175,000 unique visitors to the website. That's resulted in over 11,000 subscribers to our online newsletter and over 17,000 Twitter followers to date, and we continue to grow every day. So clearly there is a pent-up demand for this type of assistance. People are not only coming to the site, but returning to the site to find information that they can use. Our next step will be to continue to engage businesses and solicit their feedback about how we can best evolve the site to address and meet their needs long term, to broaden and solidify our community of not just federal assistance providers, but also state and local providers, and to really continue to innovate and provide new tools that best address their needs. And we're looking very proactively into the social media space, into the contact center space, and other areas as well, so that we can best ensure that we're evolving to meet our customers' needs. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dennis. Let's go to Brenda next. She is at Department of Education, as I said, and managing a program that's been around a lot longer than BusinessUSA.co.
Well, I actually paid extra for Dennis to go first because I figured after you saw how complicated his problem was, mine wasn't going to seem quite so bad. We'll see. I'm going to make a wild guess and guess that everyone in here has been to college, some sort of post-secondary education. Is that right? Don't raise your hand if you have not, because I'm going to come get you and try to get you into college. Or you've done this for your kids, or your nieces and nephews, as in my case. And I'm going to also make a guess that probably was not very easy. Raise your hand if you had a fabulous experience getting into college, shopping for college. Okay, one person back there. I want to see you after class because I want to know what you did. But as Bev said, I've joined the Department of Education, Federal Student Aid, over about 15, 16 months ago, and joined a core group of people who were looking at this end-to-end view of what happens when a student or parents or both are in the business of shopping for a college education or a vocational education, anything post-secondary. And we began looking at that from the very beginning. And our office might be best known for something that we call the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And we have about 21 million applicants currently every year that come to that application. And so on the very front end, over a year ago, the team really started looking at how to simplify that. It was running over an hour to apply for federal aid at that point, and we've gotten that down to maybe 15, 20 minutes. We had someone who emailed in the other day, it took 10 minutes, so it depends on your situation, I guess. So on the very front end of shopping for a college education, we've tried to make this thing simple, easy, fast, convenient, because that's what most everyone gets everywhere else they go if they're getting good customer service. And so we had turned our sights now on other angles of that process. And as Bev said, we serve about 34 million borrowers. So once you have come into the process and you've received aid and now you're off to your education, and then you come out on the other side with a great job and you're repaying loans, we've started to turn our focus on other angles of that experience. And the one I'll share with you today is what we refer to as the integrated student experience. In this case, we call it the integrated student view, because it is a first phase of what we hope to be a very long vision around how we make the process of shopping for education a lot faster, a lot more simple, and easy to navigate. Mindy Chiat, Abraham Marinas, and Todd Mayo, my team, are here with me in case I say anything wrong. So I'm going to try to get all the facts straight. This slide just really simply kind of shows what we're trying to do. If you have been out there as a shopper, looking around for the topic of education, post-secondary education, what is it going to cost? Where do I go? What are the graduation rates? What kind of degree programs are there? It is fairly complex. If you haven't looked lately, even our area supports more than 15 or 17 sites where you can go to find this kind of education or information on education. And so what we've tried to do is say, look, over time, we have complicated our environment somewhat for the borrower, for the student. And it is time for us to figure out how we integrate that and simplify it. And so that is what this effort is about. At the end of the effort, we will have combined some 14 different websites to clean up the clutter in that environment and made all of that content, all of that language consistent with Plain Language Act. In other words, it's all very easy to understand and it's very consistent across topics and channels. It also will begin to help students and borrowers and parents make better decisions on lending, when you take out a loan. You know, how does that factor into your own financial situation? And there's very confusing and a lot of different tools out there that you can go to look at. What we're trying to do here is integrate that into a very simple view so that you can begin to shop for an education, make good decisions for yourself, and make really sound financial decisions so that when you come out on the other end, you know, we're hearing all about students who are, you know, belabored with debt when they come out on the back end and in this economy struggling to find, you know, employment and so on. And we believe that as part of the customer experience, it's beyond just navigating a complex environment and a complex topic. We believe it's our obligation to build into that process smart ways to make good financial decisions, because the last thing we want is customers coming through our process and coming out on the back end in a worse condition than they started out. So the integrated student view really should focus on integrating a very complex environment into a very simple area. We are launching the first phase of this in July, mid-July. If I can get Mindy back to the office to finish working on it. In mid-July, we should launch that. And our vision is to take that across into a phase 2 where we can have much more interactive views. So if you're still carrying some student loans, rather than going to several different sites to look at your situation, you could go to one place and begin to navigate across that. So that is our effort in a nutshell. I've totally oversimplified it, I know, for the team that works on this. But you'll notice here that another part of this is to bring our applications kind of up to date, so to speak. So Abraham and Mindy and others on the team have continued to beat the drum with us that we have to be in the social media place. We have to be consistent and available on mobile devices and iPads and things like that. And so all of this launching in July will be applicable for those devices, and we'll launch on YouTube and Twitter and all the other Facebook media outlets. I will tell you that aside from the challenge here of doing this work, the challenge for us was to begin to take this work and land it on a top priority within our organization, because we were all in kind of budget straitjacket situations over the last year, and so we had to take a very important customer initiative, customer focus need, and compete it with a lot of other very important work going on in education, and probably more to come on that later. But that is our initiative. I think that's what you'll see. I liked yours too. Yours was far more confusing than this, but if you're out there shopping for an education today, you get a little bit of a complex, multiple sites, multiple messages and things like that. We're going to clean it up to look a little bit more like this, and then, of course, viewable on these mobile devices and all that. So our pleasure to be here today, and look forward to discussion afterwards.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Let's turn to Gina, who has seen lots of case studies from her research from the private sector.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to really be talking about 3 primary things. The first one is understanding the changing nature of communications. And with that changing nature, you cannot underestimate the importance of understanding and defining quality. And lastly, regardless of what measure you're focused on, that information actually has to be directly connected to driving change in the organization. We all know the world of communications has changed. In the traditional world, it was simply asking your customers what they think, what they want. Either it was through traditional surveys or focus groups. But with technology, we have a lot more tools. Certainly, social media has become a very important listening device. How companies can use this, how organizations can use this, how agencies can use this is still on the early cusp. In addition, with devices, there's also watching. That sort of sounds like Big Brother, but the reality is technology has enabled us to understand where people go online. GPS enables us to understand where a person is. And certainly, the traditional way of watching, traditional mystery shops are still a portfolio of tools that businesses, agencies, and organizations can use to help understand really what's important to your customers and what you need to do to satisfy your customers now. And as the previous speaker in the session before, you have to really understand what it takes to innovate. And sometimes you have to watch and listen to innovate, not just ask. So talking about the changing nature of communications, one of the things that's really critical is your customers, regardless of where they are, have different desires on where they want to be talked to, how often they want to be talked to, and they want you to understand that more proactively. In addition, particularly in large organizations, it's critical to understand that your touch points have to be integrated. Your customer or your constituent wants you to know how many times you're talking to them. They don't want to get a survey here or information there. They want to know that the information that they've given to you is integrated. And they also want you to know that don't bother me every week, every month. Talk to me when I need to tell you something or when you actually need to learn something from me. In addition, with all of the devices and with social media, the whole notion of transparency and privacy is going to continue to be critical. Customers want you to know what they're doing when they need your help. Think about OnStar. You're lost, you want to press a button, you want help. But at the same time, when you're walking down the street, you don't want somebody to ping you to say, oh, I have an offer to get you a Starbucks for $5. That sort of seems a little intrusive. So managing all of these devices is something that organizations have to begin understanding. How do I leverage this technology in a way that benefits me as opposed to becoming intrusive to customers? Lastly, it's really important for your organizations to give access to the information to be able to understand the increasing demands of the data. Organizations probably have a plethora of data. You probably have more data than you actually know what to do with. Speaking of the data, or not? Can you? There it is. Okay. Regardless of the data that you have, survey data, mystery shop data, social media data, if your data is going to help you drive any kind of action, it really has to have three fundamental characteristics. It has to be valid, right? It has to measure what you think it's measuring. For example, when you go to a doctor and they take your blood pressure, you don't really question whether it's measuring your blood pressure instead of measuring your cholesterol. That's the same thing with voice of the customer measure. Whatever you have, whether it's social media, whether it's survey data, whether it's mystery shop data, it has to measure the construct you think it is. The other thing about measurement, it has to be reliable. Going back to the example of a blood pressure. Most patients don't think, oh, maybe there's something wrong with the cough. I go there, my doctor says my blood pressure is normal. They don't walk out there and say, is it correct? But when you're talking about voice of the customer measure, often measures are thrown together by maybe people who are very good-hearted in what they want to do, but don't necessarily understand the fundamentals of psychometrics. So the measure bounces all over the place. Sometimes your scores are really high, you wait tomorrow, the scores are very low, and it causes a tremendous amount of anxiety in organizations. Lastly, the information has to be generalized to the group that you really want to talk to. Many organizations, ask, well, how much of a response rate do I need? And as a behavioral science, I always give the answer, well, it really depends. It really depends on what question you're asking. An example of that is, how many people do you really need to ask to know 1 and 1 equals 2? Right? Probably only 2 people, 1 to make sure, 2nd to validate. But for complicated constructs like, what's your favorite color? Opinions vary, maybe it's not complicated, but the opinion varies widely. So when you're thinking about your measure, you have to kind of understand, well, really, what kind of actions do I want to take and what kind of level of generalizability do I want to make? The last thing I want to speak with is, I have a feeling this isn't working. is regardless of the method that you're communicating, and regardless of how stringent and how reliable or valid your measures are, there's some things that you have to think about way up front. And the first is, how are you going to use data? Often organizations collect data just to report that they're collecting data. But the reality is the data really has to be tied to something. Whether that information is used to help inform improvement, whether it is to actually lean a process out. How do I make my organization run faster, run more efficient, create less time in the pipeline? How does information be used to think not about what do I need to do to my consumers now, but what do they want to do 2 years from now? Because often you have to start innovation today to be ready for next year or 2 years from now. Lastly, and I think that this is the most important thing that most organizations forget, and that is whatever information you collect, you really have to know that you have to get the right information to the right people's hands at the right time. Senior level information, senior people tend to want to know, if I make this change, how is it going to benefit either my bottom line, my efficiency rates? Middle managers really want to know, how do I take this information to help my vertical run better? But frontline staff also need to know that information. Although they care about making an organization leaner or more profitable, at the end of the day, frontline staff want to know, what do I need to do to increase or improve my touch point at that time? So any kind of organization needs to be layered with the understanding that various pieces of information needs to be inculcated throughout the organization at different levels.
Thank you, Gina. I'm going to ask our panelists a few questions and then open it up to you. Gina, you talked about the plethora of data, and I know I certainly feel inundated with data. We have a lot of programs in my office that each have their own measures of quality and timeliness and satisfaction. Right. We use different tools to measure these for different programs, whether it's the contact center or a website or print publications. Is there a simple metric that we should focus on, or one outcome that is a leading indicator of success?
Well, that would be quite easy if there was. I mean, again, coming from a behavioral science background, I like to use behavioral medicine as an example. When you go to the doctor tends not to ask you just one question. I mean, maybe they start with, how are you feeling? But they don't measure one thing. And that's the same way with, customer-centric information. It starts with really understanding what business outcomes or process improvement outcomes you need to understand and have an integrated strategy. Sometimes it's, first call resolution. Sometimes it's hold time. Sometimes it might be, the amount of time in a queue. All of those things are critical and can be very informative. I think the key is that information needs to be strategic and integrated and determined ahead of time throughout the organization that these are the measures that we're going to look at because these are the things that are going to drive our success.
Okay, thank you. Brenda and Dennis, a lot of us are facing either stagnant or decreasing budgets. And is it possible to continue to have improvements in customer service when you have decreasing budgets, or do we have to sacrifice customer service?
Flip the coin.
You first.
Well, I mentioned earlier we found ourselves in a bit of a straitjacket on the budget situation. This idea of the integrated student view wasn't brand new. It had been on the drawing boards for a number of years, predating me. And the situation that we found ourselves in was that the budget was not going to be able to fund it. I mean, it was a great idea. It was absolutely the right thing for the customers and for our organization. But in a competing world of priorities, our budget was going to keep the lights on and keep the operation running. So I remember a critical phone call with my team where I said, this is the right thing in a difficult time, so we can't do it the way we thought we were going to be able to do it. And so I need you all to go back and figure out how to do it, not just in a cost-neutral way. And this was a multi-million-dollar project to be outsourced for us. And over a 3 to 5 year period. And so I asked them on that day, I need you to go back and I need you to figure out a way to do it in-house and not just to do it cost neutral. I need you to find a way to save money. And I waited for them to take me out in the parking lot one night. I was, my whole team had invested so much time in the strategy and the direction, and we all felt strongly about it. And and I give them so much credit. In 3 weeks' time, they came back to me and said, we think we have a way we can do this. Right. And we think we have a way we can, and so talk about innovation and pulling on your resources. And I am really proud of them to say that they disengaged themselves from what they thought was the absolute right model. And they totally backed up, dismantled, and said, let's carve this thing out into meaningful things for the customer at a time when we can digest it as an organization. They not only avoided a multi-million-dollar project, and as a taxpayer, I'm thrilled with this, they not only avoided a multi-million-dollar effort that was going to have to happen to make this work, we're going to save $1.5 million on the books in doing it. And they're going to do it in a beautiful way that also has mobile application, all of the social media aspects onto it. So I think you can, I don't know if the wind was blowing right for us that day, but I think you can have both if you're smart about how you do it and you're willing to step back a little bit and let yourself go from what you originally thought was the absolute right answer and find another way around it. And I give the team credit for doing that.
Yeah. Dennis, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's been my experience as well. I don't think you have to sacrifice customer service even in an era of diminishing resources. I think there are a lot of creative things you can do by stepping back, as you said, and deconstructing the process and trying to find leverage points and ways that we can work smarter within the resources that we have available. And that may mean reprioritizing. And sometimes those decisions are hard because it means kind of changing the way we do business today, and sometimes it means changing long-standing cultural norms to implement our missions differently than we've done them in the past. And I think we've had some great success within commerce of kind of stepping back and kind of retooling some of our training and other resources so that we can still meet customer expectations, but perhaps in a different way than we've done so in the past, by cross-training them to be familiar with other program service areas so that they can cross-service in a way that they weren't doing previously. Likewise, I think we can use technology to our advantage. There are a lot of opportunities to utilize technology to achieve efficiencies and economies of scale that may not have existed under traditional business processes. And we can leverage shared services in creative ways to be able to extend those very scarce dollars.
And several of you talked about social media, which is very low cost as well. Gina, you've looked across many organizations. What, in your experience, do organizations neglect most frequently?
Well, unfortunately, they often neglect the customer. I think organizations sometimes become so focused on internal processes, often so focused on their bottom line, that they tend to forget that at the heart of what, particularly in service industries, right? At the heart of what you're doing is providing a service, to a customer. And sort of commenting on, how do you lean customer service in a, shrinking economy, I think organizations have to remember that your people matter. In fact, your people are probably the most important asset any service organization has. So take time with your frontline staff. Setting expectations, really doesn't cost anything to tell somebody on the phone. Tell the customer how long it's going to take. If they're, in person, give them a sense of expectations and, just sort of follow the golden rule. Treat your customers the way you want to be treated.
Thank you. I see a lot of people in the audience that I know, and I know we have a lot of expertise in the audience, so I want to make sure we're addressing your needs. Let me open it up to questions to you. Yes, in the back.
Two questions. The first question is, when you were doing the redesign, is there any private industry that you looked at in terms of, here's the best practice? And the second question is, in private industry, they had tips and tricks they can use that we can't. Like when I used to work in a restaurant, if there was a dissatisfied customer, it was always like, when in doubt, give them free food. Right. And what can, in the government, where we can't really give gift certificates or free shipping and handling, can we do with dealing with dissatisfied customers?
Well, in terms of the website design, we did try to leverage off best practice in the private sector, and we looked at a number of industry websites to see if we couldn't better align government with the increasing kind of customer expectation for what web services will deliver to them. So by looking at corporate sites, we were able to develop more traditional tools of kind of faceted navigation where you can narrow your search results and really hone in on the product or service that you're really seeking to meet your need. We also tried to leverage off one of the best practices of, those that access this particular government program or service also accessed another particular government program or service, so that for the first time we were kind of aligning them with complementary resources in a way that I don't think has been done in the past. Now, our initial website is our first effort at this. We hope to continue to evolve and enhance that functionality as we move forward, but I think there is a lot that we can learn from the private sector. Now, they have different motivations for the reason that they're putting these features in, but I think government has lagged behind a bit in bringing these more traditional features to the fore. Your second question is, I think, more challenging for me to address, but I think in part it has to do with us establishing a new level of expectation with our customers about what those standards are, kind of as has been mentioned before, articulating them up front. You can expect this, and when we fail to meet them, kind of redoubling our efforts to ensure that we're reprioritizing and aligning resources to meet them in the past. In the contact center industry, for example, there's an escalation process to ensure that if we didn't meet the customer's expectation the first time, hopefully we're going to meet it the second time, and we can escalate to make sure that we're enhancing and aligning that service moving forward. You're right, we can't give away gift certificates, but we can try to really redouble our efforts to make sure our customers are satisfied.
Great. Other questions? Yes.
In an earlier session, Bruce Chu mentioned the customer blind spot. So my question is, what are you doing to identify the whole range of customers, the continuum of customers that you need to serve, that you need to reach?
Brenda, you want to take that one since you have
Go for it.
you have a diverse group of customers.
Well, we do, and I'll take a stab at it. It's somewhat integrated here with our effort on this project, but I think it's broader than that. We are on the drawing boards with work that we're trying to do around customer segmentation in the borrower environment. So there are many borrowers, for example, who are the ideal. And we can find them. They, take out a loan, they go to school, they repay. They're the ideal 5-star, student. We also have others who are headed straight for some sort of crisis of default. And we can typically find traits and characteristics in our data that suggest to us that there are some number of students, and we can tell who they are, who might be headed toward those problems. And so what our effort to do is to segment, because we don't believe all customers are exactly the same. Their needs are not the same. Their life situations aren't the same. And we believe it's our obligation to try as best we can with the data we have to divide those up and segment, and then therefore treat them somewhat differently based on their own situation. So we're not there yet, but we are right now drawing out what that could look like, and how can we make the process better and smoother for those who are, on track to do exactly what we'd love them to do, and how can we intervene in some way, whether it's communication or a better repayment option, or whatever the case may be for students or parents who are headed down a different track. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I think the short answer is you've got to be able to segment. You've got to be able to carve up your base to understand unique needs inside those.
And are your site, you're designing your site to reach the whole continuum of customers,
Right.
those that are the ideal, and then those that are on the other extreme. And that goes for small businesses
Right.
also.
Right.
Are you reaching the whole continuum of small businesses?
Absolutely.
I can speak for Business USA. We're engaged in a very similar process of engaging subject matter experts from across the federal space that deliver these programs so that we can best segment their customers. So if you visit business.usa.gov, you'll see even in our site architecture, our site structure is essentially segmented this way so that you can, if you are a budding entrepreneur with a new idea and you're just getting started, there's a swim lane for you to jump into. If you are looking to grow your existing business, there's a swim lane for you. If you are someone who's new to exporting and you'd like to begin to export your product abroad, there's something for you. If you want to move into additional markets, another something. So we too have developed various different customer segments, and then we're aligning our programs and services to meet those. It's a huge space, so we're just getting started, but I think it's a very strategic way to go about focusing your resources on your customer.
Other questions? I know we're getting close to lunch, so I just want to end with asking each of the panelists, do you have one or two takeaways that you want to leave with the audience of actionable items that they can go back to their jobs with tomorrow to do? Gina, I want to start with you?
Sure. I think the key thing to think about is that you need to keep your customer at the center of what you do. And when you go back to your organization, begin looking at what data do you have, and do you actually use that data? If you've got channels where you have no information, ask yourself why. If you know somebody in a department is also measuring customer satisfaction, ask them, in what way does that link up? If it doesn't link up, it's an opportunity to say, geez, don't we need to pull our data together so that we actually have an integrated picture of what your customers are saying about your services or your products?
Great, thank you. Brenda?
We could probably stay here all day on this one, but I'll just point out two, kind of based on our experience here at this integrated student view. One is, I would say, if you are trying to accomplish something that's fairly complex for a customer benefit, and it tends to find barriers inside, whether it's cultural or budget or whatever it is, try to chunk it down, as I call it. Carve it up into meaningful phases where you can push those and sell those phases off. And before you know it, you have the whole meal. You just didn't have to eat it in one sitting. So that would be one thing, is kind of carve it down. The other thing I would say is, boy, create advocates everywhere you can across the organization about what you're trying to do. Collaborate with, I know in our case, we could not have made this work without our finance partners shaping our business plan for us and the benefits there. Our technology partners, our business operation partners, we had to all get to the table and get skin in the game. And that was a separate and total piece of work all its own. And it's still going on today. So I would just say collaborate and chunk it down into meaningful bites.
Dennis?
Again, not an easy question to answer quickly, but to piggyback off what Gina said, I completely agree. We need data and information. That's going to help us to make good decisions. And a great place to start is looking at what already exists. I would commend everyone to go and see what customer surveys are already available through your organizations and through your partners, see what you can learn from them. Where you don't have them already, I would really encourage you to go back and implement some. You need information in order to make good decisions, and it's easier than it ever has been within government to do this today. As a result of the President's executive order and other administrative actions that have been put in place, there's now a streamlined process for you to get Paperwork Reduction Act approval so you can implement surveys within your agencies. It's really easy to do. There's no reason not to go out. And they don't have to be voluminous. They don't have to be long. I do agree that there's no one perfect measure, but with a handful of measures, you can get a start. Start collecting that data, and then you'll find out what other questions you need to ask so that you can improve your customer service over the long term.
Thank you. I know we've gone over. We've only had 45 minutes, but I want to thank the panelists for all they've given us in that short amount of time to think about and take back with us. Thank you.
Thank you.